Hey everyone. So I'm actually coming to you now at the end of my weekend. I'm sitting at a Culver's in Sioux City, Iowa right now. So, whew, about to make the drive home back to Waukee. So this weekend, I've been wanting to come out to Omaha for a while, Omaha and Sioux City. Um, because in my podcast, I've been talking about these mud floods and these monuments and these structures, these old world buildings that Omaha and Sioux City have a wealth of. So I decided, hey, this is the last probably nice weekend we're gonna get in November. It was like 70 degrees and the weather was gorgeous and the trees and the leaves are changing, so I just decided to hop in the car and make my way out. So I went to Omaha, and I have spoken about the Church of St. Mary Magdalene previously in my other episodes. And that is the church that they say they built from the top down due to these mud floods. So I just had to see it. I went into this church and they were very welcoming and showed me around. I got some beautiful, beautiful footage. And then next door, there's the church of the Trinity Episcopalian. And it looks like a castle, and he immediately caught my eye, and I was like, oh my God, I have to go in there as well. And they as well just welcomed me in and gave me a whole rundown of the history. And also, we're going to check out my podcast. So shout out to them. But, there was a lot of cool things in Omaha that I didn't know about previously. And one of my friends pointed me over to this building that I could see from the Church of Mary Magdalene. And they said, you got to go over there and check that out. That's Central High School. And this building looks like a giant federal building. Like, I was stunned. So I'm going to put some of that in this episode for you guys as well. And, I also was drawn over to the Joslyn Museum, the Joslyn Monument. I think that's what it's called. I'll have to double check on here. Beautiful, absolutely breathtaking. And then I made my way up to Sioux City and got my Sergeant Floyd monument, footage and content. So I'm rounding it out and I'm on my way back home and I'm going to put this all together for you guys and I hope you enjoy it. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Last Word with Naya podcast. So on this episode, I kind of gave you guys a little rundown of what I'm going to go over in my little pre-video. So I this weekend was just a fun little exploration for me. I've wanted to check a couple of these places out for a while. Um, and that was thanks to, some other local and even non-local podcasters and people that I know that do a lot of the old world mud flood, Tartarian building style type topics. So I've talked about each one of these places, all except I think two of them previously because I didn't know they existed actually. But yeah, so this weekend I ran over to Omaha, jumped in the car and made sure I had all my little snacks and nice and comfortable, put a podcast on and just took off. It was a gorgeous weekend in the middle of November. And I kind of thought to myself about a week ago, like, I think I'm going to go out there this weekend. It's probably the last nice weekend we're really going to get in November before it really starts to turn into winter. And it was like 70 degrees. So the sun was shining, the sky was beautiful. A little bit of wind, but nothing crazy. And obviously, wonderful fall aesthetic and colors and things like that. So like I said, I jumped in the car and I went over to Omaha is where I started. And in Omaha is the Church of St. Mary Magdalene Catholic Church that I've talked about previously on the podcast about this being an 1800s church in the middle of Omaha that, they say they built it from the top down due to mud floods and, quote, regrading projects that they were doing. So there is a 20-foot level difference between the old level and the new level with this church. This church is like 150 years old. And it's the oldest church building still in use in the entire state of Nebraska. Gothic revival, absolutely gorgeous. Built by these German immigrants that came over in the 1800s. And yeah, I just happened to go in there and think to myself, oh no, I'm going to run into, I want to be able to go into this church and get these pictures and this content, but obviously, I didn't want to disrupt any services or anything like that. But I got really lucky. I happened to there was no one there. Literally walked right in and was able to get my content, and just absolutely stunning when I came in and saw, I was all about oh my gosh, I'm trying to look for, my first thing was I wanted to go to the basement. I wanted to see what they had on the evidence of this mud flood and everything. And instead, I walked into this absolutely, beautiful cathedral, and the ceiling, I've never seen a blue, deep cerulean blue, um, almost like velvet ceiling like that ever in a church. And the stained glass was gorgeous, all the woodwork. And you could really just tell, yes, this is 150-year-old church. Super old, very well maintained. And you can tell that, especially with the facade outside, that they've done a really bang up job with, you know, um, integrating the old into the new. That's how I'll say it. Um, but it really is a full 20 feet off the ground, and you can see where the door used to be before this regrading and mud floods, and then they finished it um, you know, in the 1900s. So built in well, let me start with that these Midwest mud floods were recorded coming through anywhere from the early 1800s, 1830s through the 1850s. And this church was built in the 1820s, 1830s. So there's a lot of pictures throughout Omaha and Kansas City, like I've showed you guys before, of these mud floods and the digging out of these buildings and building on top of these structures, which we do this all over the world. We see this, the Romans built upon older civilizations, the Catholics, basically everybody around the world. That's just how things work, um, where whoever takes over is building on top of the other civilization. Unfortunately, that leaves that older civilization to be forgotten or destroyed, or, you know, misremembered for what they were actually capable of. So, I wanted to go in this church and really get a look at it myself, because I had only seen pictures, and the real life did not disappoint. I was in absolute awe, and I was really excited to walk around it and get a look at Omaha in general. It's quite interesting the way the city is kind of laid out. First off, whoever's in charge of construction in Omaha, you need to be in jail. Um Absolute chaos. Chaos. Whoever is in charge of all of this construction all over Omaha, you need to be in jail because I don't know how the people of Omaha deal with this. Um, but I digress. So, I I really started just kind of walking around and looking at the area, and I was like, "Holy cow! There's another church right next to it, which we'll get into." That I'm like, "Oh my god, that looks like a castle. I have to look at this." And um, just kind of looking around and seeing these familiar things of these like really large old world buildings with the big columns and like these federal buildings, state buildings as they would call them, um, that are just stunning. So I ended up like looking over and I could see this huge building on the top of a hill and I was like, "Oh, that looks interesting." And somebody says, "That's a high school. That's the Central High School." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, stop. That's a high school." But I'm not going to rush through this. I want to get to that as well. But like I said, I was really impressed with it reminded me of Kansas City and Des Moines and these Midwest towns where there's all these old world buildings kind of clustered together. Um, so I really got a good look at St. Mary Magdalene's and really looked like at the ground and the way that it was built, how close the buildings are to each other. Um, and just kind of getting an idea of the situation, when I went to the basement as I was like, you know, taking myself on this private tour through their through their church. Um, I went to the basement, of course, like I said, and right there on the wall, there was a wonderful old-timey picture framed of these mud floods and them digging these tunnels and digging the railroad that was coming through Omaha as well. And I was like, and there we go. So that was a fun little gem. Um, I didn't want to explore too deep into the church by myself because nobody else knew I was there. Um, I was just kind of, ooh, the door's open. And if somebody would have been in there, obviously I would have greeted them and asked them permission and everything. But I I swear I was in there for good intentions, obviously, just for this content and to appreciate it as well. So yeah, I got a really good look at this building and it's beautiful. Like I said, you definitely can see the German influence and the Art Deco Gothic revival style of old world building. And they did a really good job, like I said, covering the facade on the outside to match almost seamlessly, but there's signs. The door is 20 feet off the ground. And they've made it look just like, a window almost or a little porthole hatch window type thing. So then I made my way across the street because like I said, there was this castle just beckoning me over and I just had to go over there. So the next church I looked at is called the Trinity Episcopal Cathedral, and that's the oldest church building in use in all of Nebraska. Um, and it's absolutely beautiful. Sorry, I think I had said that St. Mary Magdalene's was the oldest. It's not. It's been there for 150 years, but um, the oldest church building in use in all of the state is the Trinity Episcopal. So I don't think they count St. Mary Magdalene's as being the oldest because it wasn't completely finished. Like they were continually kind of working on it and building onto it into like the later 1800s. Like it was finished in 1903. So the Trinity Episcopal was actually the oldest one in um, in all of Nebraska. That's a church building still in use. And that is also very Gothic revival, as you can see. This was um, really interesting and beautiful because I was like walking around the outside, just beautiful day, like I said, to get pictures and content. And I, this bishop guy walks over to me. He can see me outside taking pictures and comes over and he greeted me. He was very welcoming, and he said, yeah, I'm just, I have a podcast and your church is beautiful and I just wanted to get some really great content. And he goes, do you want to come inside? I'll show you around. And I was like, heck yes. So he took me inside and gave me like a rundown of the history of the church and the doors. There were these old doors that were brought over from England, a parish in England. And they have these old, you know, medieval locks on them. And the stained glass and the amount of detail in these stained glass windows, I was so fully impressed. I think he told me there were over 40 of them. And they represented churches, all the churches in Omaha, and some are churches that don't even exist because they never even got built. So I thought that was interesting as well. Um, and then obviously the ceiling and again this cathedral and this just in awe. And I the attention to detail, the columns, all the woodwork, very, very inspiring and moving. And I love going into old churches like this. They nowadays they just build these like huge mega churches and they've lost all the beauty and all the, what's the word I'm looking for? The vibe, the aura, the je ne sais quoi, all of the things that make a church a church. And that is these uncomfortable little wooden pews and these soaring ceilings, these cathedrals with intricate woodwork and stained glass and um these old organs, original. And there was another part of the church that was newer, like built in like 2008, and it was very obvious from the outside. Like I literally was like, "Oh my gosh, these are two even though they matched the stone um made out of gray stone, they said. They matched the stone, but it's very obvious that one of these is, 1800s and the other one is newer. So the details are just incredible, and I had to really appreciate that and really get an idea of, the people that were building this in the time and trying to get an idea of like the area outside of what it looked like. The guy that built the church and his wife are buried outside in this wonderful little garden. Again, beautiful. And I was standing out there and I was like, this would be the perfect way to go. Like, perfect way to be buried. There with your significant other in front of this beautiful, hidden away, really, in this little garden on the grounds of the church that you built. So I thought that was a wonderful little um touch, like a little gem to this Trinity Episcopal Cathedral. And the the bishop inside, like they were just so welcoming and so sweet and um interested obviously in my podcast and me doing this. So shout out to them. And they're like, oh, well, we can't wait to see the episode. And I'm sure they want to make sure also that I'm not in any way, slandering or smearing their church, which obviously I'm not. If anything, I'm praising it over and over. And, I'm a fan. I'm definitely a fan. And, it was very welcoming, very, a lot of like, you can tell that these are not mega church people. And this church is filled with families that have been coming here forever, like since the 1800s. There's stained glass windows as well with like the names of these families that also like helped build it or donated or whatever, clear even back in the 1800s. So I thought that was really amazing. Super beautiful. And again, a beautiful day. Um Beautiful sky, just wonderful shots, and the way the light hits this stone is was really special. And I was like, this is really cool. I love that these churches were like boom right next to each other, and I got them both in the same day. But I'm going to pivot now to Central High School, home of the Eagles. um Go Birds. Different Eagles, but go Birds. um I Like I said, I was standing there on the corner of this church and see this building and was told it's the high school. And I was like, hmm. So I immediately made my way up there, as one does. And I think what strikes me most about this building, especially as I got closer, I was like, oh my gosh. I just couldn't stop thinking to myself that this is a high school. And when you come across the Midwest and in Iowa, like Lincoln High School in Des Moines, and you find that they've repurposed these old world buildings into a high school now, or whatever, a federal building or something, because it reminded me of the Iowa State Capitol, minus the domes. That's what I felt like when I was there. In the staircases, and I can't believe there's kids going to school in this every day. I didn't get to go inside because it was a weekend, so I couldn't go in. The doors were locked. Uh, but I had a ball walking around it and just nerding out on the building, on the facade, on these little details, on these little pediments and these Romanesque figures, and the way the light was hitting the building and the stone. And I was just like, this is amazing. Um, Again, the scale of this building is gigantic. The staircases. Um, it again brings me back to the concept of the way like these European Romanesque buildings like the Iowa State Capitol that have these massive columns and pillars and Roman figurines and just all these little touches of the old world that we definitely don't do anymore. Like when you can easily, you know, as I'm standing in front of these churches and this building, and I'm getting a full shot of Omaha and being able to look around and just immediately with the eye pick out these old world buildings that are very much obvious in our new style of building, which is super cheap, super modern, super brutalist architecture. So I was really fascinated by this, and it also made me feel like Union Station and that World War One monument down in Kansas City. The thing I noticed about the Midwest is these the building style and these monuments are all very similar.
they all share this same style of building and repurposing. So, what Central High School was previously, when I did my digging, was the Nebraska Territory Capitol building. So, it was like the Capitol before they moved the Capitol to Lincoln. And that was in 1859. And then the government of Nebraska basically donated the building to Omaha, but for educational purposes only. So they turned it into a high school, of course, as one does, as you do with these type of buildings. I I don't even need to see the inside because the outside was amazing. I'm sure a lot of the inside grandeur is a little bit lost on the concept of the high school and the way it's been renovated. But I was having an absolute grand old time on the outside and just thinking to myself how much this reminds me of a palace or an armory or like the Capitol building in Iowa minus the domes. So I made my way around it as far as I could and then kept seeing this beautiful pink building hitting like the sun hitting this pink building in the corner, and I kept looking over there. And I'd been recommended that as well as the Joslyn Museum. So there's also Joslyn Castle in Omaha. I did not get to go there today. I didn't even think about it. I was on a mission. I was on a mission and I didn't even I don't know. I mean, I don't know how it escaped me. I feel like I heard them say Jocelyn Castle, and I was like, okay, there's a castle? Like a real castle? They're like, yeah. And then they're like, but you should go check out that museum. So I, sidetracked, didn't even check out the castle. But um the Joslyn Museum, the castle is Scottish style. So they Sarah and George Joslyn, philanthropists, um, they were originally from Vermont. They moved to Des Moines in 1879, and then they moved to Omaha in 1880 because George had a printing business ready to print newspapers and press stuff like that. Um, but he was also known as a philanthropist, and they loved the arts and music and, you know, traveling and all those types of things. So, George died the richest man in Nebraska in 1916. And his wife wanted to memorialize him and their love for art and all these things and built this museum, which was obviously added on to and adjusted over time. And, um, but she built this Jocelyn memorial and in the style of this Art Deco Egyptian temple type references is what they said she was pulling from, and Native American and European. So this I let me just tell you again with this, I didn't go in because I was on a hurry. I wanted to get up to the Sergeant Floyd monument. I wasn't in a hurry. Don't let me say it like that. Sorry. I wasn't in a hurry. I was just overwhelmed almost trying to get everything, and I was like trying to make sure my timing was on point and that I was still able to get to where I needed to be without it being basically dark. So I kind of snuck into this area. I did not go into the museum and get a ticket. Shame on me. I apologize, Jocelyn Museum. I will make it up to you and come through you for real next time. Because now I have to go back anyways and see the castle. So yeah, I just kind of like walked down the way and hopped down this little wall that was not that not that deep, and then it just walked over across this little courtyard. Got these shots, and this is made out of pink marble, pink Georgian marble, and inside of it, there's over 38 different kinds of marble, and then it has these Native American, European panels all over the outside that represent all sorts of things like pioneer press, dissemination of intelligence, the homesteaders, civic builders, Indian fire signals, Indian prayer for life signal. Um, really cool. And I was like, this is incredible. Again, beautiful day out. Just the way the sun was hitting this pink marble. I want an entire this is what I want my house made out of. I feel like I didn't even know this type of marble existed. I mean, I knew, but geez, it really just blows your mind that people that really think outside the box when money isn't when money is no object, like we see again and again with all of these type of old world buildings. Money never seems to be a hindrance or an object. They seem to have all the funds in the world for building elaborate state buildings in the middle of the 1800s, you know, when everything else in Iowa and Omaha and Kansas City is basically empty, just little shanty towns and farmers, if that, and then just giant old world building monuments covered in gold and marble and imported from all over the place. The marble inside is imported from like Africa and Asia and Europe, all over. So I cannot wait to come back and go in and do it properly. But like I said, I was trying to get my content and get it in, and I didn't even know about this until that day. Um, so I was like, oh, holy cow, I got to get this in. So I just grabbed what I could real quick. And like I said, I promise you guys that I'll give you the full thing next time and like go in and get real full content for you, because super super beautiful. And once I got to know more about it, I was like, oh, now I do need to really go in and finding out more about the Joslyns and what their interests were, and their love of the arts and my love for museums. Um, in that castle, I'm going to have to go see that. So, like I said, I'll bring you guys another part on Omaha for sure. I also found out while I was there that Omaha, due to these mud floods and these grading projects, Omaha has an entire like underground world going on. I was shocked. Like some I just I didn't know this. Like I went out in Omaha and went to the old market, and there's this area called the Old Market Passageway. So, this area is, how do I describe this? It's underground, as well as being a multiple story building up. But it's kind of like I said, it's like an underground world. It was wild. It was like a hidden world inside of this little air, like this old town area of Omaha. So I go down into it and I'm shocked. There's stores, there's restaurants, beautiful aesthetic. Um, there were all sorts of shops. There was a grotto, wishing grotto with beautiful artwork and like stone heads that you can, like a wishing well, all the pennies all over. Super beautiful. And I was just like, again, overwhelmed. I was like, holy cow, I would have never guessed that this is in Omaha. So I made my way through this maze, and you can tell that it's the place where the younger people go, because of the aesthetic. And like, there were definitely girls like all over in there, like with their friends, with the Instagram pictures, because the aesthetic is just so amazing. And I don't blame them. I was hyping them up. Get it, girl. Um, and it was really cool because you would go into these little shops. I found this cute little like art shop. Went in there and started looking at the art and talking to the owner, and then come to find out, like, you can make your way through his shop and open the other door and come out onto the street again. Even though I came in from below him underground through this maze of a building, and it's like a hidden, like I said, a hidden world. I was really impressed. So did that and was like, wow, okay. Omaha might really be a lot more than I thought it was, obviously, with these old world buildings and all these things, but clearly there's more for me to even see now. And yeah, I can't wait to go back and show you guys more. So then I jumped in the car and I made the last trek of my exploration weekend up to Sioux City, which is about an hour and a half away from Omaha north, along the Missouri River, to the Sergeant Floyd Monument, which I've talked about before as well with you guys. And I just wanted to see it for myself. And like I said, I just knew it was going to get cold eventually, probably this week. And then, we're going into winter. It's Thanksgiving in a week. So I was like, okay, I really need to get out there and do this. So I drove all the way out there, and I luckily, boom. Imagine that I was the only one at this monument in Sioux City. Like, the people of Sioux City probably just don't care and have no idea, or they've already been there or whatever. They're like, okay, yeah, I drive past it every day. I don't really care what that is. Um so, like I've talked about before with the Sergeant Floyd Monument, it is the oldest national landmark in the country. Again, let me say that again. It is the oldest national monument. So it's the first national monument in the entire country, for the United States of America. So this is in when I was in Omaha, you are obviously knowing about the Lewis and Clark expedition, because they have a whole tour that they'll take you on in Omaha and show you where they kind of started their way up through Iowa and doing stuff there. So they continued up the river, against the river, paddling up it, not down it. And their friend, Sergeant Floyd, died in Sioux City. Um, so he is the only member of the Lewis and Clark expedition to have died during that journey. So they obviously were really close to the guy, and they buried him along this river on the bluff, and went about their day, and remembered him and kept his journals and things like that. So then in the 1800s, um later, about 50 years later, he died in 1804. And in 1857, It's the erosion and the flooding from the Missouri River causes his remains to get exposed, like wash his grave out. So they decide to basically gather what they can of his remains and keep them safe. And then in 1894, um, they start going through his journals again, and they form an association called the Floyd Memorial Association because they felt like, you know what, maybe we should give this guy a grave finally. And like, Lewis and Clark obviously cared about him, and they looked at his journals, and being that he was a part of this expedition, definitely was a part of the exploration of Omaha and that part of Iowa in Sioux City. So they just wanted to commemorate him and say, you know what, let's do this. Let's build him another grave. Uh, so at first, evidently, just started out as like a marble slab, and then in May 1900, they said, "Screw it, let's build an obelisk for him. This marble slab ain't enough. We got to do better than that." So they built 100-foot sandstone obelisk on this bluff that overlooks the interstate and really all of Iowa from this side. I was amazed at the view and the river, the Missouri River. Um, Gorgeous view. And I I was looking at some of these some of these like panels that they had there, and like they kind of had the area on these bronze panels um looking out over the river, basically kind of like trying to show you where other things were that they had marked. And unfortunately, they were literally so graffitied and destroyed, like I could barely even like read them. So unfortunately, I didn't get any footage of that because it was like, things were graffitied and carved into it and stuff like that that I obviously just don't want to take pictures of. But then I was looking when I came back down after I was looking at a lot of this and looking at these information boards. It wasn't until I came back and looked at it again that I saw that there was some person had put their own personal picture on this information board by Sergeant Floyd. I was like, "Wait. What is that?" Um but again, just like the World War I monument in Kansas City, I I was a really like, it's always one of these things with these obelisks and these pillars that are interesting to me. And obviously their alignment and the way the light hits them. And so that was really cool to kind of like, and I was there right at noon. So right at noon I was able to like, look at this and see the perfect like shadow outline and the way the sun is directly like behind it or above it right at that time. So that was really cool as well. I wasn't a very big area, just kind of like was looking at it and getting some of this content and trying to appreciate the people that were building this. Um it's really too bad that they had this like cage around it. Uh but I see why, based on the fact that these other like these other things, like I said, there those bronze signs and things like that were already like destroyed and defaced. So I understand they don't want people even being able to have the chance to do that to this obelisk. So I understand it. It was just too bad, that I couldn't get any closer to it. But really really cool. I'm super glad that I went out there and saw it and got that footage, and it was a beautiful day, like I said. And the view overlooking the state was just incredible. I was like, you know what? I would bury my friend here too. Shit, I would want this as my tomb. And there's a slab on the side, like a shaft, where they put his actual body in there now, or what was left of it. So I really enjoyed the entire road trip. It was a really fun day, like weekend of exploration with great weather and so much information and so much more for me to still like do. But I was like, I really want to be able to get this all in while I'm here and in the area. And um, the weather's great, blah, blah, blah. There's no snow. And I want to be able to take my time when I'm looking at these things. And um, like I said, want to double back and get the Joslyn Castle and inside the Joslyn Museum. And of course, maybe go inside of the high school maybe next time and see what it looks like from what I can see for myself. But a really great weekend. There was a lot of other things in Omaha I wanted to go look at as well. There is a military dump yard not far that I was going to check out that one of my friends told me about, where they just kind of like dump all these decommissioned like helicopters, submarines, tanks, um all that type of stuff. So I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. Next time I'll have to hit all these little spots and just see what I can get." I'm really excited for the Joslyn Castle. Because once again, I'm just a sucker for history and these things. And, St. Mary Magdalene's was wonderful. I'm glad I got to see it in person and really get a look at it and see that proof of these mud floods slash regrading projects that they were doing in Omaha that I've talked about but never seen. And then, you know, seeing Central High School was amazing, and I'm just in awe of it. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is a palace. This is the Iowa State Capitol all over again." And then obviously the Trinity Church, gorgeous, castle-esque, and the Joslyn Museum. So I'll double back. I'll make some more content for you guys, but I just wanted to get this out, and it was such a fun weekend, and I probably will be on my little holiday hiatus here. I'm going to bring you another episode um right before Thanksgiving next weekend. And that one's going to be fun. It's going to be kind of like a cooking episode with some friends. So we'll go to film for that one instead of just listening to me talk. And I apologize with my voice is crazy right now because I've been talking to these people all weekend and just chattering away. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get this podcast in and just dig into it. So thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Last Word with Naya podcast. I can't wait to bring you more content. I hope you like it. Like, subscribe, share, and let me know what you think. Bye.